Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to our wonderful webinar on fetal development and ultrasound bills, the new frontier in the war on sex education. My name is Michelle Slaybaugh. I am the Director of Social Impact and Strategic Communications for SIECUS, Sex Ed for Social Change. We are super excited to have you here today. We would love for you to go ahead and drop in the chat where you are coming in from, where you're tuning in from, what organization you're with, as we are really looking forward to a robust conversation about what's happening all over the place. It's like everything is on fire. And, you know, the road to progress is not easy, but we are ready and we are glad you are here with us to get geared up. All right. Together, we can get this done. We can get this party started. So please, I see Brittany is in the house. Thanks, Brittany, for dropping your information in. Tammy, welcome, welcome, welcome. I love to see this. Julia, love it. Thank you. So we really want to not doom and gloom you all day. We're here to get ourselves fired up for the fight ahead, because together we are stronger. So if you are unfamiliar or you're just new to SIECUS, SIECUS, Sex Ed for Social Change, has served as a leading national voice for sex education since 1964, asserting that sexuality is a fundamental part of being human, one that's worthy of dignity and respect. Through our advocacy, our policy, and our coalition building, SIECUS advances sex education as a vehicle of social change, where all people receive sex education, are affirmed in their identities, and have the power to make decisions about their own health, pleasure, and wholeness. So we welcome you, welcome you, welcome you. And before we get started and bring on our fabulous speakers, I do want to touch on a few things. Let's start with the purpose of today's webinar. We're here to break down the harmful impact of the fetal development and ultrasound bills that are sweeping across the nation, and equip you as advocates with the tools to fight back. Furthermore, in regards to housekeeping, this webinar is not only live streaming, it is also being recorded and will be available after the event. We've, in previous webinars, had some questions about captions, and the StreamYard platform at this time does not allow for live captions, but once this is posted on our YouTube channel, there will be captions added to it. Questions can be submitted via the chat, and we will do our best to address those questions throughout the presentation, as well as in the Q&A on the back end of the presentation. We do want to let you know that we have been made aware that there is a possibility anti-abortion activists may have access and may be participating in this presentation. So we will give the heads up that if we see any type of harmful comments in the chat, we will immediately remove people, because this is meant to be a safe learning environment. So you will be booted and you will be blocked from rejoining. Resources, including the petition, bill tracker, action alerts, will be shared at the end. So let's talk about why we're here. Across 20 states, lawmakers have introduced 36 bills aimed at forcing medically inaccurate fetal development lessons and ultrasound videos into school curricula. These bills are not rooted in science. They are a part of a coordinated effort to spread misinformation, reinforce abortion stigma, and undermine comprehensive sex education. One of the most commonly cited tools in these bills is the Baby Olivia video produced by ReproAction, an anti-abortion extremist group known for pushing false narratives about abortion. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or ACOG, has stated that this video is medically inaccurate, misrepresents fetal development, and is being used as a propaganda tool rather than an educational resource. So today, we're going to be unpacking how these bills fit into a broader abstinence-only sex education strategy. We're going to examine who's behind these bills and why they are so dangerous, and how advocates, educators, and policymakers can fight back. But before we get to that, I want to give you an introduction to our fabulous panelists. We have Maisie Stillwell, Director of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood North Central States, Aaron Matson, co-founder and president of ReproAction, and Katie Christensen, State Director of External Affairs for Planned Parenthood North Central States. And you will get to see them present throughout the duration of this presentation. But up next, I am going to throw it to our other presenter, Allison Macklin, who is the Policy and Advocacy Director here at SIECUS, Sex Ed for Social Change, who's going to give us an overview of these attacks. So Allison, welcome to the stage.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Michelle, and welcome everyone. So glad to have you with us today. So what we're going to be talking about is, like Michelle said, that this is a new warfare on sex education. So many of you are really familiar with the abstinence only, which has been rebranded into sexual risk avoidance. And this here is the 2025, which I can't believe it's 2025 version, which actually started in 2023, but our current day version of the fight that we're in. So basically, this is the anti-abortion and anti-sex education movement using, again, fear tactics, and they're trying to use fetal development and ultrasound mandates as this new tactic. These policies are designed to mislead students, they're reinforcing stigma, and they push an ideological, I always get tripped up on that word, agenda. They fit into a broader abstinence-only strategy aimed at restricting comprehensive sex education. So before we dive into what these things, where they are and what they all entail, just a brief overview of comprehensive sex education. I'm sure this is not new to anyone, but we are talking about comprehensive sex education as it relates to the national sex education standards. So these standards were created in a K through 12 format. So this is just like any other learning standard that is offered in a school setting. They have K through 12 standards for math. There are K through 12 standards for literacy, and the national sex education standards are K through 12 standards for sex education. So it helps teachers and helps educators to understand what is appropriate to be giving to students in third grade and what's appropriate to be giving students who are in high school, for example. It's important to note that when we are talking about comprehensive sex education, we are talking about LGBTQIA+ inclusivity. So, and that's a really important distinction between the two movements. And we're also talking about culturally competent and trauma-informed education. So that means that we are taking real people's experiences and the real realities of their lives and helping them to understand sex education as it applies to them. So how do we get to this place in 2025 where sex education is being co-opted by the anti-abortion movement? Well, it's important to remember that we haven't always been here. And in fact, up until the 80s, we were actually a pretty sex education positive nation. So if we look back at the 1930s, that was when the first Department of Education published their first materials around sex education, and they did training for teachers in sex education. We saw World War II come, and condoms were heavily distributed among the troops, big STI prevention campaigns. And then we start to see the feminist movement starting. And it's around the feminist movement starting, the Civil Rights Act, birth control becoming legal, and Roe v. Wade happening, that we start to see some pushback. And that's not a coincidence. So in the 80s, that's when we really start to see a lot of money getting pulled and pushed into abstinence-only education. So both at the state level and the federal level. And then we started to see a lot of more attempts on censorship, a lot more attempts to control people's whether or not they could access contraception, whether or not they could, how they raise their family, etc. Which gets us to this place of where we are today, where we have the opposition has rebranded abstinence-only education to sexual risk avoidance education. New name, not so new anymore. It's been around for a while, but goal is the same. And that is really, and they did this rebranding. Why? Because abstinence only till marriage education is extremely unpopular. People in the United States, regardless of where they, live, what sort of political affiliation they have, they want to make sure that sex education is medically accurate and that science and facts are being delivered in an age-appropriate way. This is despite overwhelming support from leading professionals such as ACOG, the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the majority of parents. As I said, this vocal minority has been surprisingly successful, but this is largely due to their disinformation and fear-mongering strategies. These folks lie to subvert and control so that their beliefs are imposed upon general society. Many of these anti-CSE or comprehensive sex education policies are rooted in religious beliefs. So this is important and a distinction because public schools, we know there's a separation of church and state, which means that public schools have the responsibility to provide secular, fact-based education that respects all students' rights, regardless of what religion they are, where they come from, what language they're speaking. That is the purpose of public education and how it's been set up in the United States. So anytime we mix religious ideology with public education, that's really eroding academic integrity and excludes marginalized students. And this was very purposeful. When the country was developed, history was looked upon by the founding fathers, and they saw how dangerous some religions had played in the state of public affairs. And so they were very explicit in this foundational component. So what are we seeing today? As of this morning, there are 36 bills that have been filed. That doesn't mean they're all still active, but 36 is the largest we've ever seen, and that's across 20 different states. So almost half of our states have some sort of bill that has been filed that is pushing this ideological agenda. And these are ranging from state level mandates to expanding abstinence-only narratives to really talking about fetal development and from what they're saying is conception through to birth, using ultrasound materials, using inaccurate materials. It's really pushing this narrative that pregnancy is inevitable for a person with a uterus and really discourages any sort of contraception discussion. These are bills that are being backed by major funders. So Heritage Foundation, Alliance Defending Freedom, Focus on the Family. Those are the types of organizations that that are driving these types of efforts. And really, these are attacks on these attacks on sex education are part of this coordinated effort to control reproductive decision making. So they go hand in hand with the anti-abortion rhetoric that has been overwhelmingly defeated across the United States because the US population has said, we want access to abortion. This is also problematic because they're trying to take a system that we know to teach facts, to teach math, to teach things that is 1 + 1 = 2, right? And put in misinformation. And that is not something that belongs in our school systems because it reinforces gender norms, it restricts reproductive rights, and it weakens long-term health outcomes. So we need to be fighting back with the science-based comprehensive sex education. We don't allow for inaccurate math to be taught in our schools, and the same should be true for all subjects, and that includes sex education. Oh, you're muted, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Allison, for that wonderful presentation on the overview of attacks that we are currently faced with. And next, I'm happy to bring on Erin Matson, the co-founder and president and CEO of ReproAction, who is going to talk to us about how the attacks are not about sex education, but more about anti-abortion propaganda. Welcome to the stage, Erin.
Thank you so much. And I will start by sharing my screen. So let's dive right in, shall we? So I wanted to talk more directly about live action and the baby Olivia bills that are a component of what Allison was just talking about. So we'll start out by saying that live action is absolutely the worst public school faculty ever. And will be a presentation on anti-abortion propaganda in the form of baby Olivia bills that are surfacing at the state level. So one moment as I switch my slide. So first I'll talk a bit about ReproAction, then provide an overview of the baby Olivia video that they are pushing. Then talk some more about live action and the group behind this bill. Talk about the purpose of the bill, consequences, and opportunities for action. So first, succinctly, ReproAction leads bold action to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. I'd like to talk directly about baby Olivia. So it is a video that was created by Live Action, an extreme anti-abortion group, in the style of a nature documentary. It is designed to provoke strong emotions in the viewer. It makes a large number of false, inflammatory, and misleading claims that are not backed by science and that have been debunked by numerous medical professionals. And it starts the developmental timeline before the medical definition of pregnancy, and then purports that a variety of developmental milestones occur weeks and sometimes months earlier than they are actually cited by medical and scientific authorities. So I think it's really important to take a step back. They're trying really hard to present this as if it's coming out of the medical community. And even on their homepage for the baby Olivia video, it asks, is this video accurate? And then it says, yes, this state-of-the-art animation, and I just like to emphasize animation. They make it out as if it's video footage. Instead, they're admitting here that it's animation, that it was reviewed and certified by what they call leading OBGYNs and medical professionals. And then they name 6 specific individuals and their biased affiliations with 4 organizations that are far from neutral on the topic of abortion. I'm going to dive into that more deeply because it's important to know. So each of the 6 actors that they're holding up as either medical or scientific expert has an official tie to a group that opposes abortion and is seeking to ban abortion. 2 of the individuals are affiliated with the Christian Medical and Dental Association, which says in a position paper that they affirm prohibition against abortion. And to be clear, only one of the people that they put on the page, they identify the Christian Medical and Dental Association. The other, who they list first and just as a doctor and professor, is actually affiliated with the Christian Academic Physicians and Scientists, which is a specialty group of CMDA. So a full third of the medical authorities that they're citing for this video are affiliated with that anti-abortion group. One is presented with APLOG as a credential. The American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists was formed for the explicit purpose of being a counter to the medically respected ACOG, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And APLOG says that they, quote, aim to be the preeminent medical voice that prohibits abortion. To have Charlotte Lozier Institute listed beside them. Now, doesn't that sound neutral? It's not. It is the research arm of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, a massive political group in the United States that spends millions of dollars every year seeking to ban abortion. And finally, one is listed with the American College of Pediatricians, which again sounds neutral, but is an anti-abortion group. And they say directly on their page that they believe that human life begins at fertilization, which is before the medically accepted definition of pregnancy. And it's actually been named a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center for its anti-LGBT work, and specifically anti-LGBTQ youth, which is, I think, another important lens when these are the folks purporting to go into public schools and talk to youth. So regarding the Baby Olivia's bills specifically, so in 2023, North Dakota passed a law requiring schools to show Baby Olivia or a similar video. And then in 2024, Tennessee passed a similar law. 10 states then introduced similar bills, with 7 of them explicitly mentioning Baby Olivia. So you can see here that in this current time in 2025, Arkansas, Iowa, Kentucky, Missouri, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Texas, and West Virginia have state bills that explicitly mandate viewing of the Baby Olivia video or mention live action by name with reference to a video. There are 10 other states that have proposed similar bills that don't explicitly name Baby Olivia, but are absolutely part of this push. And one of them is Idaho, where a bill has passed in the House and Senate and is currently headed to the governor. So while all of these bills, whether they explicitly name Baby Olivia in live action or not, are about the specific video, there has been some controversy, even among its anti-abortion supporters, whether or not to name live action or Baby Olivia explicitly in the legislative language. One example of this was in Arkansas, where a state senator, a co-sponsor of the bill, mused aloud, what if live action becomes something that I don't agree with tomorrow? And that also said, live action may tomorrow change their stance, and it may be to our detriment that we are mandating that this be taught at our schools and then not having the ability for our schools to have other options. So this is out of model legislation that came from live action, and we're even seeing the legislators that are pushing these harmful bills having some discomfort and agita explicitly naming live action in the legislation in some places. In Florida, a bill sponsor also appeared uncomfortable explicitly affiliating with the film and said, this is not about Baby Olivia. The point is this: whether or not they're directly named in the bill, these ones that are mandating the video that are either explicitly naming Baby Olivia or having the same language and not naming live action or Baby Olivia, they're very much behind and implied by the proposed anti-abortion propaganda video mandates. So I think it's important to take a step back. Who is this who wants to go into public schools and indoctrinate our children in anti-abortion propaganda? Live Action is an extreme national anti-abortion organization that is known for video and social media campaigns. It was founded in 2003 by an activist named Lila Rose when she was 15. Live Action's early campaigns included misleading, highly edited, so-called sting videos that Rose created with former Project Veritas leader James O'Keefe targeting Planned Parenthood. Live Action is also closely associated with David Daleiden, who at one point worked for Live Action and, following his employment with Live Action, produced videos targeting Planned Parenthood that had extremely misleading and highly edited videos that had an inflammatory refrain that was then actually referenced by a mass shooter in 2015 who targeted a Colorado Springs Planned Parenthood Health Center, in which he killed 3 and injured 9. When he was apprehended by law enforcement, the first thing that he said was the rally cry in Daleiden's videos. Live Action is anti-abortion, it's anti-birth control, and it's anti-IVF. They espouse fetal personhood. And they are increasingly active in state level lobbying. And we'll talk some more about that in a bit. A little bit about Lila Rose. She is known for repeatedly claiming that abortion is never medically necessary. So you have here one of such quotes saying, "Abortion is never necessary when a mother's life is in danger." I've debated Lila Rose before and talked about this. Savita Halappanavar is a woman who died in Ireland begging for a life-saving abortion. Abortion absolutely is medically necessary, and it does endanger people to make these false claims. Additionally, Lila is known for even going farther than anti-abortion Alabama state legislators, who she turned around and pressured after the Alabama State Supreme Court declared frozen eggs children. And so she said here that, she was proud of the state Supreme Court, and she's very much anti-IVF. And finally, she is out of step with just about everybody who is reproductively capable, as most people do use some form of contraceptive at some point in their reproductive lives. And, is deeply against birth control, says that hormonal birth control is one of the biggest scams of the last century. So very extreme views. I want to take a step back and think about the purpose of the bill. The primary purposes first. So it absolutely is to spread disinformation about pregnancy and child development in support of so-called fetal personhood narratives. That's what this is about. They're trying to bring it into schools. They're also trying to insert a national anti-abortion propaganda group into state-level curricula. And yes, Live Action absolutely wants money. And they are seeking to replace comprehensive science-based sex ed with anti-abortion indoctrination. We also believe there's a secondary purpose at hand here, that this bill is an attempt to build the state-level lobbying and political profile of Live Action, which has been seeking to grow in this area. I said that we're initially really about video and social media campaigns. They hosted their first lawmakers summit with state legislators in 2022. At the time, the Baby Olivia bill already existed and was already produced, and they leveraged that into a sex ed model bill. So that's where this came from. And Live Action has recently moved into the C4 space. Live Action is a 501c3, but they've recently moved into the C4 space that gives ability to engage in political work. So we think that that's a big piece of it, that they're trying to use this as a vector to become a bigger presence at the state level. And we also see that they're seeking to reduce and ultimately replace the imprint of Planned Parenthood in the sex ed space. It can't be understated how much they complain about Planned Parenthood, even when discussing this video. So in terms of consequences, first of all, we know that, as Allison said, not only is abstinence only unpopular, it doesn't work to try to scare young people away from sex. Spreading lies and confusion about abortion and pregnancy puts people at risk of adverse health outcomes, especially marginalized young people, including young people of color and LGBTQ youth. And that the anti-abortion movement is seeking to indoctrinate future generations. They're trying to get new folks on board for their deeply unpopular bans on abortion, contraception, and IVF that they're trying to push. And they're trying to displace quality information in public schools in order to accomplish that political agenda. So we do have a petition up on our website at ReproAction.org, and I will drop that in the chat as well. But with that, I'll cede my time. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Erin. Wonderful presentation. And I think you really helped to encapsulate who Live Action is, what their agenda is, and how they are moving their power in a very strategic way. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so next up, I am super happy to bring up Katie Christensen, State Director of External Affairs, Planned Parenthood North Central State, specifically she's located in North Dakota. She's going to talk to us about state level examples of these fetal development bills in North Dakota. So Katie, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm not proud that North Dakota was the first state to pass this law and bring baby Olivia into our schools, but I'm delighted to be here with all of you and to share a little bit of information. So hopefully we can stop the spread of this. So as it was mentioned, this bill was brought forth during our 2023 legislative session, so it's been here for a couple of years now. After the Dobbs decision in 2022, the door was basically wide open for this anti-abortion agenda. North Dakota is no stranger to anti-abortion tactics, not by any means, but the passage of baby Olivia kind of fit into this broader agenda that included a near total abortion ban that we have here in North Dakota. It's actually being challenged in the North Dakota Supreme Court right now. During that legislative session, they put in $1 million towards crisis pregnancy centers. They declared January 22nd as North Dakota's Right to Life Day. They passed tax exemptions for car seats and diapers and expanded Medicaid for pregnant women. I want to be very clear. I think many of us on this call would probably support tax exemptions for car seats and diapers, but a lot of these same legislators opposed paid family leave programs. They opposed tax breaks for period products. They opposed child care relief. So they seem to be very specifically set on kind of this anti-abortion, pro-birth agenda. So here in North Dakota, the people that brought forth this bill, it was really no secret at all that this was anti-abortion. The supporters of the bill were North Dakota Right to Life, North Dakota Concerned Women for America, North Dakota Family Alliance, a lot of the groups that we would see behind other anti-abortion bills. Now, in terms of baby Olivia specifically, our law does not reference baby Olivia. But it does require schools to show a high definition ultrasound video of 3 minutes, illustrating the development of the brain, heart, sex organs, and other vital structures, as well as fetal growth at every stage of pregnancy. And to fulfill this requirement, school districts can pick any video that meets those requirements, but ReproAction provided the baby Olivia video for free to our Department of Public Instruction. In some states, that's called the Department of Education, but we call it DPI here. They removed their ReproAction logo, but they made the video available. So basically kind of setting it up to make it really quite easy for schools to start using this. So although the video itself is not mandated, the bill's broad language created some confusion within the schools. So for instance, the law says every stage of human development. I would guess that only medical professionals specializing in obstetrics actually study every stage of human development within a pregnancy. Some other confusion came up that the law refers to the video must show organ development at every week, yet it never actually even mentions the lungs. And if you watch the video, it kind of goes up to about 20 weeks and then skips to 27 and then it skips to 38. So is that every week of development? So I think a lot of schools really questioned whether any video would meet those requirements. But since our state Department of Instruction was saying, hey, this is compliant, this meets the law, I think a lot of schools just started showing it to kind of check that box so that they could say they were compliant. Now, in terms of the impact of the actual law here, it's rather unclear. I think it was a year or two ago, the Associated Press did an article and they reached out to 12 different districts in the state. 10 of them responded, with 5 of them confirming that they were using baby Olivia. So I think the actual use of that exact video is a little hit or miss throughout the state. I think schools are sometimes finding other videos that they feel meet the requirements. We did have a really big victory in the Fargo public schools. They started showing the video at first, but a parent challenged it, saying that it wasn't medically accurate. The Fargo Public Schools has a policy saying that all materials must be medically accurate. So the school then reviewed the video more in depth, determined that it did not meet the state standards, and actually pulled the video out. So we did see that as a big win here in Fargo. So that's my spiel. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Michelle.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that insight, Katie. And now I am happy to bring up Maisie Stillwell, Director of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood North Central States, specific to Iowa. So, Maisie, welcome to the stage.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and I will be talking similarly to Katie about some state level examples of what these Baby Olivia bills look like in practice. So here in Iowa, we are right in the thick of this fight. So we had a version of a Baby Olivia bill that made it almost all the way across the finish line last legislative session. And we were able to stop that. Now, this session that we are in right now, it's back. And so not a big surprise to many of us here in the state, but we are right back at it. So there are, we started out this session with 3 different versions of the Meet Baby Olivia video incorporated into bills. As Katie mentioned, this we have different versions where one version mentions the video by name, other versions do not. And this issue around the ultrasound video is another strategy that we have seen incorporated into the bills that have been amended. So the bill version that made it out of our state Senate was amended to make that requirement interchangeable. And so that we have seen these various strategies being deployed in real time. So this, the proponents of these bills are the usual suspects. It's the Christian nationalists. It's those who are seeking to put this indoctrination into our public school classrooms and further politicize our classrooms. Now, the opposition to these bills is what's been uniquely impactful here in Iowa thus far. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you where this fight will end up, but what I can say is that we have been unique so far in the fight against these bills, coming from a lot of different angles. Of course, we have the reproductive freedom component here with. Of course, I'm with Planned Parenthood, and so we've been leading that fight from the angle of protecting reproductive freedom and keeping anti-abortion propaganda out of our classrooms. We've also been joined in close partnership by the Family Planning Council of Iowa in that fight, as well as our Interfaith Alliance, and of course, speaking more to that idea of putting religious ideology into our public school classrooms. But we've also had education advocates showing up in full force against these videos and really taking a unique approach to say, we're not even here to talk about the content that is being prescribed within this. We are saying that this legislature ought not prescribe curriculum to our schools, that this is not the role of our legislature. We have a process for how educational standards are set and then are further specified by our Department of Education. And then it is up to our locally elected school boards who are then to determine the curriculum that is chosen in their classrooms. So we have seen just a really a broad coalition of folks who are working against this dangerous legislation from very different perspectives. And so far that it was the Senate Education Committee that was a big holdup in the state last time around. We've seen many of the concerns that have already been mentioned here today about what if this is written into our code and does not allow for future advancements. We have seen concerns around the the ages where this is being introduced. When we fought this last year, we were talking about grades 1 through 12. That was amended up to 7 through 12 as it went through the committee process. And then the versions that we have seen introduced this year have varied. We saw one version that was introduced as grades, again, 1 through 12. That was amended up to grades 4 through 12. And then another version in the Iowa House that actually mentions the Meet Baby Olivia video specifically is requiring this content for grades 7 through 12. So we see a lot of internal conflicts working here for those seeking to push this video to see what version of this bad bill they could get over the finish line. But ultimately, we know that folks are horrified to hear that this sort of indoctrination is that there's this effort to put this very unpopular agenda, this narrow agenda into our public school classrooms. And it does fit within this broader fabric of anti-abortion and anti-choice efforts here within the state of Iowa. We had a near total ban go into effect in July of last year. So this is an abortion ban at around 6 weeks of pregnancy. That was, a battle that we had fought since 2019. And so when we see a near total ban going into effect, we simultaneously have unlicensed clinics being funded in the state through what is called the MOMS program. This stands for More Options for Maternal Support. Again, we're funding unlicensed clinics. We are subjecting Iowans to disinformation, to untrained professionals who are pretending to provide legitimate medical services. At the same time, our state is in a dire maternal care crisis. More than a third of our counties are maternity care deserts. We have the worst rate of OBGYNs per capita. That is 52nd out of 52 states and territories. And we also have a severe crisis for Black moms in the state who are, Black mothers are 6 times as likely to die from a pregnancy related cause than their white counterparts. So our maternal system is crumbling beneath us. And at the same time, what is being prioritized is an effort to spread misinformation. We have heard repeatedly from anti-abortion activists in these subcommittees for the Baby Olivia bill specifically that polling shows that young people are just too supportive of abortion access. We need to be getting to them sooner and providing them this indoctrination to change their minds. So it is truly an effort to infiltrate our classrooms with misinformation and disinformation to try to get ahead of folks making decisions for themselves and valuing their reproductive freedom, as we know that so many across our nation do. So this, as I said, where this stands in the current lawmaking process, we're in it right now. There's no time like the present. So we are currently fighting off these effects. We are between 2 legislative funnels that we have in Iowa, the second of which is on Friday, April 4th. That is when we will have a good indication of whether or not these bills have any chance to make it all the way. So right now, it is an effort to discourage lawmakers, many of whom we know are not a fan of putting this into our state code at a time where we are banning books. We are preventing education on topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then, proposing to put anti-abortion propaganda seems a bit hypocritical. So we are hopeful that we will again be able to fight off this legislation. But it is truly because of a network of folks being able to learn from my colleague Katie in North Dakota about the fight that they have gone through in their state, being able to learn from those fights and work together to fight off what we know is really dangerous public policy and keeping that politicization out of our classrooms. So happy to address any questions, but that's what I'll share for now. Thank you.
Thank you so very, very much, Maisie. I definitely appreciate your insights that you just shared. So for the last 15 minutes of this conversation, what we're going to do is we're going to bring all of the panelists back up. So I want to encourage you, if you have questions, which I have seen Brenda dropped a question in, and we'll discuss that, as well as any other questions you may have, drop them in the chat and we will get to them. And I am also going to be asking some questions that we had gotten in from some of our supporters. So welcome back to the stage, everyone. Maisie, where are you at? There you are. And so at this point, the first question is messaging, right? What are some messages that work? And to Brenda's kind of question, what are examples of effective messaging to lobby against Meet Baby Olivia bills in deep red states, specifically places like Oklahoma? And I'll throw this to the group. Anybody can answer.
Well, I can start. So, I think one of the things that, and this is what we're seeing from the current administration, is that there has always been a respect for states' control and local control around educational issues. And we respect that as well, and support local control as well. And I think that, when there are mandates around a certain curriculum, specific video, or then that can be problematic because it takes away that local control. And so I do think that that is something that's really foundational in our country around education, is that while we do have federal guidance, that is largely left to local control. And I do think that that is an effective argument.
So this is Katie here in Fargo. I would echo that. So when the bill passed here in North Dakota, we have our anti-abortion crew in the legislature has a supermajority. Like, there's a lot of them. The only people I would say from that group that voted against this, it's because they opposed the mandate, that they felt that it wasn't their job to kind of meddle in education and picking materials for our schools. So I think that was the messaging that resonated with them.
Yeah, and I would just add, from my part, completely defer to our state colleagues who are fighting on the front lines and getting this done. But I will note, as I shared in my presentation, that we now have multiple instances where state legislators became, even proponents of the bill, sponsors of the bill, became uncomfortable about the affiliation with Live Action or naming Baby Olivia. So I think it's very important to name that there's a multi-million-dollar national lobby group that is trying to insert itself directly into local curriculum as well, because even the bill sponsors are uncomfortable with naming them.
Yes, I would echo those sentiments and say that particularly in a state where we do have a near total abortion ban in effect, connecting these dots for folks and helping them to see not only the political, but also the deceptive nature of these attacks are truly unwelcome in our classrooms. And so to say that politicians have already inserted themselves into our exam rooms, we don't need them in our classrooms as well. Really helping to draw that line for folks and help them to see that there is a larger playbook here. This is not just seeking to provide more information to students. It's pulling back the curtain and helping folks see that we don't need to politicize our classrooms through this sort of this style of indoctrination.
Thank you so much, all of you. I see Aaron down in Florida. I hope that made sense. What I heard there and what I took there is helping to show people the lines, the connection, the through lines. And to that end, when we start to think about effective mobilization strategies and what advocates can do at the local, state, and national level, I am going to throw this to Katie, because in your presentation, you spoke about how a parent challenged something. So can you speak a little bit more how parents can identify if their state has this type of law where if a parent challenges it, it has to go into greater, they have to do more research on that. And then I see we have now the questions are coming in. I love this. So Katie, I'm gonna give that question to you. So you said something that was effective. Tell us, how do parents find out? How do advocates find out about these things?
Yeah, and actually I will draw your attention to the comments. So Sydney Stock works here in Fargo. She is at a partnering organization, ReproAction, and they were actually the one that did a lot of the behind the scenes work to get the video out of the Fargo public schools. And so she put some information in the chat there. So I would say, at least in Fargo, we're very fortunate that as part of our school policies, information needs to be medically accurate. And so that helped us. So if you have a school district or a state that says that the information in your schools has to be medically accurate, you can challenge based on that. Now, most of these challenges, to be honest, they come when people want like book bans, right? Like they want a certain book to be pulled out of a library. But this actually helped us in this way, that we had a parent who said, I don't want my kid watching this video because it's not medically accurate, and that goes against your policies. So the school district had a plan in place then. So that's what helped us in this situation. So if you can lean into requirements for what your materials look like or who picks the materials, that's what's really going to help move it in the right direction, I think.
Thank you so much. And Allison, the SIECUS advocacy toolkit. Can you talk to us about how parents can leverage and how advocates can leverage that tool in a way to start getting very clear at who to contact and how to get started in this advocacy work?
Yeah, thanks. So we have what's called the Community Action Toolkit. Thanks for dropping that in the chat there. And that's a really great place for any parents who are interested in getting active and trying to figure out, what is being taught in our schools. How can we get involved in what's being taught? How can we fight back against some of these issues at that local level? So I do encourage folks to take a look at that. And what's really important is to remember that the majority of Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, want medically accurate, factually based information taught in schools, whether that's around math or whether that's around sex education. So if we continually go back to that place, we know that we have the majority, and we just need to figure out how to support one another in defeating these types of calls.
Thank you, Allison. I just noticed, Paige, I love your question. It says, in Michigan, the legal language is shall not be medically inaccurate. Okay, now we're talking semantics here. They're trying to confuse us. So I'm going to open this up to the panel. Does that mean the same thing as must be medically accurate? And if not, can anybody on the panel tell me what the difference is?
I mean, I think you can 100% lead into that, because there's medically inaccurate information in that video. 100% medically inaccurate information. So lean into that.
Anybody else thoughts from our panel on that word change there? All right. So we're almost done. I see a couple more questions coming in, but there was another question I wanted to ask that I think is really important. So this is to the panel. How can we support the overwhelming majority of parents who want good sex ed? How do we support the educators and the students on the front line who are experiencing this? So that's open to the group.
I would say that awareness is such a big factor in this fight against these bills. It's so true that the overwhelming majority of parents, myself included, want their kids to have this good sex ed, medically accurate, age appropriate sex ed is so important. And so when they learn about the bad actors and these efforts to undermine that, I think it really facilitates that conversation with lawmakers to say, knock it off. I had no idea this was going on. Why in the world would you do this? And so being able to facilitate the conversation through those, the advocacy toolkit, I think that's great, because when lawmakers, here in Iowa, this, the Christian nationalist lobbyists who are behind this are at the Capitol in full force, and lawmakers are hearing from them all the time. And so it's so important for parents to also be in that conversation, so that lawmakers are not just getting that message from these extremist groups that that this is what they should be pushing, that they're also hearing from this vast majority of parents who actually find that horrifying. So supporting the educators and students on the front lines, I mean, gosh, they make incredible storytellers. So anytime that we are able to shine a spotlight on those folks, especially our young people who are just so recently been in sex ed and who have had less than stellar experiences, they make some of the best spokespeople you could ask for to really share their personal experiences, and of course educators the same. So I think just telling those stories and facilitating the conversation is a great way to support those parents.
Great. Is there anyone else that wanted to answer on that? Because there's a question I missed that I'm very interested in asking. So state lines aren't closed off. How do we address consent, lack of sex education for students that are moving through state lines and including in are indulging in harmful behaviors? That's a tough one. But as I understand that question, what do we do with our students that are transient? What do we do with students who may come from maybe a really, really good school, and then all of a sudden they're thrust into an environment where they don't have access to any information at all, and could be seeing harmful behaviors, being engaged in their peers, or maybe doing that, but don't have the support systems? Any ideas from the panel?
I mean, I think that this is one of the reasons why we at SIECUS and a number of, and all of our partners on this call are supportive of the Real Education and Access for Healthy Youth Act at the federal level, which would ensure that young people are getting medically accurate, fact-based information about sex education, regardless of where they live. Because we do see that as a major disparity. So depending on what zip code you grow up in, even sometimes within the same state, we're seeing people having different experiences with their sex education. We're seeing educators having different experiences with their training. And so in order to alleviate that, we do need to ensure that there is more of a, support at the federal level that's dictating that this is fact-based information. Just as there's been, those statements have been made around literacy, and there's been goals, or the Federal Department of Education has made those goals for other subject areas. It's time for that to be true for sex education as well.
Yes, Rhea, the Real Education and Access for Healthy Youth Act is something we all want. Thank you, Bria. So we are currently at time. And before we go, I want to give every panelist an opportunity to give us your best outro. We are so happy all of you were here with us today. Please be sure to stay tuned, sign the petition, drop the link, Erin, if you have your petition. We'll drop SIECUS's I think it was already dropped, which was the map. We have a petition and some action alerts. So Allison, I'm going to let you do your last signing off, and we'll keep it going.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, I think, again, it's just really important to be aware, as Maisie said, that there's this assumption that, kind of schools are doing okay. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we need to really make sure that we know what's going on. We need to make sure that we are fighting for what the majority of Americans want, and that is respectful and safe learning environments where they are able to, where we're able to teach about bodies and health in a way that's non-stigmatizing and non-judgmental.
Thank you. And I'm going to toss it over to Erin next. Oh, I was like, where did she go? There you are, Erin.
Oh my gosh, I tried to unmute myself and instead I stopped my cam. That's completely ineffective. Sorry. Well, I was trying to make it short and sweet and to say to fight and speak up. I mean, this is the most important work that we are doing. I'm just grateful to be in this space. Thank you to everyone.
And Maisie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for having us on this call. I would just say, especially if you are in a red state, keep in mind that you are part of a healthy majority here. You are not alone in your perhaps often lonely state legislature. You are truly part of such a broad base of folks who want this good sex ed, and it is worth fighting for. So keep in that good company. Thank you.
Yep. And Katie.
I think we can all agree that youth deserve access to honest and relevant sex education, and never let that go. Keep leaning into that and we'll get there someday.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you to all of our panelists and all of our attendees for your time and attention to this matter. We want you to share the resources that we have up on the screen, and we look forward to continuing to fight together, because together we win. For SIECUS, I am Michelle Slaybaugh, and we appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.